All right, guys, what is up? Truth and transparency here. Come on in, make yourself known. My open letter to Ashley Jennings.
Your Honor, our position is that the court should suppress the IGG identification and everything that flows from that. This is supported by Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution, due process, Article 1, Section 17 of the Idaho Constitution. Your Honor, there was no warrant for several phases of the search that led to the IGG work, investigative genetic genealogy. And we think every single one of those stages, a warrant was required, none was given, and so this must be suppressed. Your Honor, I'd like to identify the three stages, and they are when Idaho State Police Forensics Lab, through Moscow Police Department, moved a DNA sample to Othram Laboratories to develop a profile to run through genetic genealogy investigations. There was no warrant for that search for a SNP profile that could be used to attempt to identify somebody. The next stage would be when that was transferred to the FBI for their forensic investigative genetic genealogy work to try to identify somebody. No warrant was in place for that work either. Finally, there was a trash pool in Pennsylvania, and there was no warrant for that trash pool either. All three of those stages of this case, there should have been a warrant, and there wasn't, and this must be suppressed.
And do you know approximately how many warrants you worked on in this case?
I don't, ma'am. Several. I don't know the exact number.
I'm going to...
Offices with doors, but in the same second floor of the Moscow Police Department.
Are you aware of Special Agent Balance in his work in doing self AT&T records, having any access to AT&T records without a warrant?
I'm not aware of that, no.
Are you aware of him having any ability to review AT&T records through any portal without a warrant?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Do you have, when you say that it was provided to him, to Special Agent Balance, is that because you don't have the capacity, technical skills, I guess, to review that raw data and do something with it?
Yes, ma'am.
Was there anybody else that you relied on for that other than Special Agent Balance? Is that because you don't have the capacity, technical skills, I guess, to review that raw data and do something with it?
Yes, ma'am.
Prior to this case, have you ever prepared an Apple warrant?
I don't remember.
What was your training related to Apple warrants in December of 2022?
I had no official training at that time.
Prior to this case, had you ever prepared an Apple warrant?
I don't remember.
What was your training related to Apple warrants in December of 2022?
I had no official training at that time.
Prior to this case, had you ever prepared an Apple warrant?
I don't remember.
What was your training related to Apple warrants in December of 2022?
I had no official training at that time.
How was the DeSales email account known at that date?
I don't remember.
How was the DeSales email account known at that date?
I don't remember.
How was the DeSales email account known at that date?
I don't remember.
All right, guys, welcome to Truth and Transparency. Here it goes. Just want to remind everybody that back on February 24th, 2025, well, actually throughout this hearing here, as you guys know, this was in January of 2025, so it happened before February. And Ashley Jennings was adamant that, yeah, that stuff about the timing advance and all that can be handled in, that's cross-examination of, when we call witnesses to the stand or whatever Miss, Taylor's talking about over here. That's fodder, cross-examination. Well, what ends up happening is not even a month after that hearing, the state would put in a motion in limine, and it's AT&T timing advanced. So comes now the state of Idaho by and through the Latah County Prosecuting Attorney's Office and respectfully moves the court for an order in limine prohibiting the defense from making any reference to the absence of AT&T timing advance records for Bryan Kohberger. The state brings this motion based on defense counsel's repeated references to the alleged existence of AT&T timing advance records related to the defendant's cell phone. See defendant's supplemental responses, RE expert witnesses, defendant's exhibits D11 through B, page 49, listing all this shit. The state has been advised. The state has been advised and will offer documentation and or testimony that AT&T records are produced by their Global Legal Demand Center, GLDC. AT&T GLDC did not begin producing timing advance records until May 2023. All records for defendant's cell phone were obtained from GLDC in December of 2022. The state intends to supplement this motion with additional information from the FBI and or AT&T prior the hearing on this motion on April 9th, 2025. Any statements or references or inferences by defense counsel or their witnesses that there is additional evidence that could have been provided or was not provided is a mischaracterization of the evidence and should not be allowed. Under IRE 403, any probative value of such evidence is outweighed by the danger of misleading the jury, undue delay, and waste of time. For these reasons, the state requests the court issue an order in limine prohibiting the defense from making any reference to the absence of AT&T timing advance records for Bryan Kohberger. Ready? Ann Taylor would follow that up with, on March 17th, while I was getting drunk on St. Patrick's Day, Ann Taylor, objection to the state's motion in limine, AT&T timing advance records. Comes now Bryan Kohberger through his attorneys and objects, and it's grounded in his rights under the United States Constitution 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendment and the Idaho Constitution Article 1, Section 13. The state's motion seeks to prevent Mr. Kohberger from confronting through a full and fair cross-examination of a portion of the case. The state seeks Mr. Kohberger's silence on records produced by AT&T timing advance records. Again, I want to repeat this. The state seeks Mr. Kohberger's silence on records produced by AT&T, timing advance records. It does not say his. Okay. The state's motion informs the court timing advance records were not produced by AT&T Global Legal Demand Center until May of 2023. Mr. Kohberger agrees with that claim. However, that is only partial information. Well, I'm about to blow everybody's mind. The state is misleading the court in its motion by what it leaves out. What the state is not saying is that the timing advance records existed at AT&T in November and December of 2022. The state has to know this is to be true because in April of 2024, the state produced the actual records from AT&T for cell towers and individual timing advance records for 2 of the 4 deceased and 1 for a person who had been a person of interest at the beginning of the investigation, as well as over 3,800 people on the cell tower. These records were from November of 2022 and were produced in discovery to Mr. Kohberger in 2024. It is accurate that AT&T Global Legal Demand Center did not produce TA reports to law enforcement in 2022. The TA reports from AT&T and Global Legal Demand were not available to state and local law enforcement until June of 2023. However, the existence of these reports in this case is direct evidence that these records could be and were provided to law enforcement by AT&T prior to production through GLDC. As such, Mr. Kohberger's AT&T timing advance report from 2022 would not have been provided through AT&T Global Legal Demand. AT&T had timing advance reports prior to their availability through GLDC. Now, I have obtained just yesterday through January 6, 2021 disclosure just happened yesterday. Washington field office released through the FBI. It's from the January 6 pipe bombs. Okay. Right here, verbatim, what they do in best practice, okay, is the FBI will issue to global legal demand, okay, a request for preservation of records. Okay, a request for preservation of records. In essence, that's what they did when they preserved the towers all around Moscow, Idaho, okay? In terms of we want the time frame from 3 to 5, okay? So what what the FBI does as practice, as best practice, is they will write up this letter and send it to AT&T, and it's in pursuant to Title 18 United States Code Section 2703. This letter is a formal request for the preservation of all records and information with certain cellular towers, cell towers. So they're preserving the cell tower records, okay, the data that's within them, not specific people, because you don't know who the suspect's going to be, okay? So cell towers that is in the possession, custody, and control of AT&T Wireless at the following 2 locations. So then what they do is they provide you with the area that they want you to preserve. And once you go in and you preserve that area, you just have 7 days to preserve the area. Okay? I request that you do not disclose the existence of this request, blah, blah, blah. But here, January 5th, 2021, 7:30 p.m. to 8 p.m., latitude and longitude lines. January 5th, 2021, 8 p.m. to 8:30, these latitude and longitude lines, this area. I request that you preserve for a period of 90 days the information described below currently in your possession in a form that includes the complete record. This request applies only retrospectively. It does not in any way obligate you to capture and preserve new information that arises after the date of this request. Furthermore, this request does not obligate you to produce any information at this time. This request applies to the following items, whether in electronic or other form, including information stored on backup media if available. So what you do is, this has nothing to do about search warrants. This is a preservation, okay? A preservation request, which global legal demand and the FBI would send it to global legal. If they did this in 2021, this just dropped from the feds yesterday for transparency purposes on how this all works. All records and other information relating to the accounts and any associated accounts, including the following. If you had names, addresses of the people, of the IMEI numbers, you could do all that. But C says local and long distance telephone connection records, records of session times and durations, length of service, telephone. So all these things you're asking to be preserved within those areas. Okay? So this is a preservation request. And this is what the FBI does. Okay? They preserve the data. That way, once you do have a person of interest, maybe you have a person of interest in a month, 2 years, maybe you have a person of interest in 90 days. You go and you preserve these areas. And what you tell them that you're preserving is we need the names, the addresses, the local long distance telephone connection records, records of session times, length of service, telephone or instrument numbers like I was just telling you guys, the MEI numbers, the SIM, all this stuff. Other subscriber numbers or identities, including temporary assigned network addresses, IP addresses, means and source of payment for such service, all data about which cell towers, that is antenna towers covering specific geographical areas, sectors, received a radio signal from each cellular telephone or device assigned to the account. Any location related data that would provide additional information in reference to the IMSI or MEIED connected to the tower during the time period requested. This would include any estimated latitude and longitude of the device. Any estimate in relation to the device's distance from the cell site. That is what timing advance is. This information is referred to as many different things that are not limited to but shall include any PCMI, which is per call measurement detail, RTT, which is round trip time, NELOS, network event location system, or data associated with the emergency 911 system. If you have any questions regarding this request, please call me at either blank number. Sincerely, this person from the Special Advisory Special Agent Washington Field Office, FBI. So, can the FBI contact Global Legal Demand and do a preservation? Okay. And that's going to preserve so that you can get anybody's information. If and when you do have persons of interest and suspects, you preserving areas. Now, I told you guys that they didn't go out and get thousands of videos and sit there and watch all this surveillance. That's not what they did. They preserved the area. They preserved the area around Moscow. Okay. And that's where they got the 3,800 numbers. But if you think for a second that they didn't put a preservation order in for the towers all around WSU, then that would be 100% not best practice, foolish, because you have a car leaving, you have it not in the area, you think it went across and drove over to, Washington, and you felt this very, very early on, okay? You had Pullman, you were working with Pullman, okay? You were be on the lookout for this white car, and so you want to be preserving this data, okay, in this area for if and when you would ever get, your suspects. So basically the loophole here, and it's not a loophole, but the reason that Cyray wanted to testify, in my opinion, is to talk about best practice with the FBI. Okay. Because there's a key, it's what you're not saying. Let's talk about the preservation orders. Let's talk about the preservation requests. So, now, the other thing that I think is interesting is everybody's going back and forth on saying, well, Global Legal Demand didn't, supply anything until 2023, yada, yada, yada. So I believe that the state on purpose wrote up the motion the way that they did on purpose to focus on, hey, we never asked for that in our search warrant. Okay. We never got that back. We never got Bryan Kohberger's anything back. No, you already had it because it was preserved, motherfucker. Okay? Capiche? So it is accurate that AT&T Global Legal Demand Center did not produce the timing advance reports to law enforcement in 2022. The TA reports from AT&T Global Legal Demand were not available to state and local law enforcement until June of 2023. However, the existence of these reports in this case is direct evidence that these records could be and were provided to law enforcement by AT&T prior to production through GLDC. As such, Mr. Kohberger's AT&T timing advance report from 2022 would not have been provided through AT&T Global Legal Demand. AT&T had timing advance reports prior to their availability through GLDC. The state attempting to say the reports were not available until GLDC produced them is nothing more than asking the court for permission to hide the state's failure to disclose Mr. Kohberger's AT&T timing advance report. Depending on how far back the report goes, it will contain exculpatory evidence that will partially corroborate Mr. Kohberger's alibi. Remember how I told you guys that I believed that if Bryan went over to that house, that he went the long way, he didn't go that short way? Mr. Kohberger will provide evidence, testimony, and argument in support of his claim that the state misrepresents the availability of TA records. It doesn't say of Bryan's, of TA records. Okay. How do you think they were able to, on December 20th, hand over to the FBI. Here's a video of at 5:30 Bishop, Bryan Kohberger, or this white sedan driving at 5:30 and going to be crossing right over path. Here, what kind of car do you think this is? How do you think that they were able to find it that soon? They weren't going. None of these people were sitting at a desk like I am right now and reviewing videos and looking. Let's just see if every car that passes. Come on, man. No, they were able to get all of this stuff because they had his timing advance records. Because the area was preserved. Once they got his name and they got his number from the ticket, pop that bitch right in there. And then the areas that were preserved over there, WSU, voila. So they did everything to build up the probable cause affidavit, and then they acted like they didn't have that. Now, Ann Taylor goes on to say that Mr. Kohberger's timing advance records are different than other records provided in discovery. The records are location data that are accurate in determining the location of a cell phone. Timing advance is a term used in the cellular network industry relating to a measurement of time because it measures the device from the cell tower, okay, and then it's passing off the handoff, so it's very, very accurate, okay. Given the signal is traveling at a known speed, it is possible to use timing information to determine the distance of the mobile device from that base section. These measurements can be very, very accurate, and they are very, very accurate. When a mobile device is using multiple cell sites, it is possible to utilize, and she goes on to explain that, okay? AT&T was the last of the major providers in the United States to produce timing advance data for law enforcement. The first timing advance reports from AT&T provided to law enforcement were the result of software program utilized by AT&T from a third party. So they go on to talk about that. Mr. Kohberger is aware of the fact that AT&T GLDC did not produce the timing advance reports in 2022. That's not what happened. There is no doubt any representative from AT&T GLDC will testify to that fact. Mr. Kohberger does not contest this claim. The state is also aware of this, as they did not obtain the current AT&T timing advance records in their possession through the AT&T GLDC. They had to utilize the FBI, who went through a different legal compliance unit within AT&T to obtain those records. Now, at the onset of the investigation, detectives with the Moscow Police Department began obtaining call detail records as part of the investigation. In doing so, they heavily relied on assistance from Special Agent Nick Balance with the FBI. This is first documented in emails exchanged on November 15th, 2022. Detective Lawrence Mowry and Brett Payne were tasked with writing search warrants to AT&T for a number of different requests. On November 15th, 2022, Detective Mowry requests verbiage via email from Special Agent Balance in reference to AT&T records. An email string that was produced by the state in discovery contains a very clear account of Special Agent Balance's knowledge of AT&T timing advance being available. Special Agent Balance's email to Detective Mowry states, subject, AT&T tower dump. A tower dump is it's a preservation. Nelos became location database or record. While we look back at it, listed. So he goes ahead and says, just list all of that because they're all applicable with them now. Nick Balance signed. In reviewing this email, there is no doubt the email is in reference to AT&T as it is referenced in the subject line. Additionally, there is an attachment with the email chain that contains the word warrant AT&T. Detective Mowry then forwarded Special Agent Balance's email to prosecutor Ashley Jennings, and today's live is titled My Open Letter to Ashley Jennings. Detective Mowry was informing prosecutor Jennings of the availability of AT&T timing advance reports and requesting it be added to the warrant. In reviewing the AT&T search warrants that were produced over the next few days after this email chain, all of them contain specific verbiage requesting AT&T timing advance reports, just as recommended by Special Agent Balance. While the above referenced email chain is clear as to the existence, availability, and knowledge of availability of the state regarding AT&T timing advance reports in November of 2022, in July of 2024, Mr. Kohberger received from the state AT&T timing advance reports from 2022 in reference to this investigation. These TA reports were not for his phone. The state turned over 3 separate AT&T timing advance reports. Those timing advance reports came because of the preservation of the area, and then whenever we would need it, okay, here, pull that person's, pull this person's, pull this person's. The data. Because it's already preserved. That's how they had, once, when he's saying that they had access to 3,800, it's because it was preserved. And you're preserving, not like, you don't pick people. You're picking locations to preserve. You're picking these areas and you're setting up a geofence in essence. Hey, here, we're setting up a geofence right here. So any AT&T phone that comes within here during this time period, boom, we got them. So the 7 day verbiage, I want to be clear about this. The 7 day verbiage is that you just have 7 days to preserve the data. Okay. You don't need to have your suspect in 7 motherfucking days. That is not what this is. You need to preserve the data so that when you do have a suspect, you will then go back. So you have 7 days, meaning if I want something from today, okay, I have between today up until the 9th to get my preservation order in and to preserve that area. And I want to preserve these between this latitude and longitude, this point, this point, this point. And so what I'm saying is that it's imperative to understand that you don't need to know anybody, because that's the whole thing, is we don't know who committed any murders, right? But we want to preserve the data so that once we have suspects, okay, then we go to all that data that we preserved, okay, back in, within the first 7 days, like they did here, to be able to have the 3,800 accounts that they had, the numbers, all those numbers. It's because they preserved that area. And so what I'm saying is, what was going to come out is that they preserved the Pullman area as well, because that would be best practice, right? Right. So again, the state turned over 3 separate AT&T reports. All 3 of those AT&T reports were timing advance from November of 2022. In the early phases of this investigation, law enforcement identified 3 AT&T phones of interest, 2 belonging to deceased, and the third phone belonging to a person of interest whom law enforcement was investigating as a suspect. Detective Mowry authored an affidavit in support of search warrant to AT&T. Do you remember? Okay, I'm about to blow it up here. This is like your big pow pow. Do you know who that person of interest was? His name was Jack Showalter. Okay. Do you remember when he told investigators that he traveled? I didn't go the way that I went home from traveling from Moscow to where I lived in Boise is I went the other route, which actually takes you through Washington. Okay. Jack Showalter has AT&T. So what I believe is that they wanted to write this up very, very interesting. Like, we know that you preserved the area of Washington and Pullman, and we're telling you that we basically know I could never make this argument because I didn't have all the police reports. Okay. When Jack Showalter was talked to, not on the phone, but when they went to his house, okay, when did you leave? Okay, yep. And which way, and he tells him, he's like, I didn't go the way like through, he gave that he would have went through Washington, okay, to come loop back around, which people say that's normal. You can go either way. It's no big deal. Okay. And he didn't leave until Monday morning, the following day. So not on Sunday because he was still there. And if you remember, guess what else he did? Do you remember how he told him that I went to Floyd's to go get basically weed? Okay, you're going over that way, right? You have to be an absolute dumb if you think that the FBI did not preserve the area of WSU. A subject fleeing and could be fleeing out, right? And so you'd want those areas around. You'd want to preserve that data. That'd be the first thing that you're doing, especially if this shit's cold. Okay. Hey, this isn't somebody in the inner circle. Fuck. We need to preserve. You'd be preserving hella motherfucking data. And you have just 7 days to do that. Okay. Now, Detective Mowry authored an affidavit in support of a search warrant to AT&T issued on November 16th, 2022, that demanded the AT&T timing advance records for these phones. All 3 timing advance reports were produced by AT&T and are currently in the state's possession. The timing advance report that the state disclosed on other phones in what Mr. Kohberger has sought relating to his own phone record, it's others. Like, he requested the report through discovery and during a motion to compel. Mr. Kohberger is aware and will provide testimony in support that the AT&T timing reports currently in the state's possession were not provided to the state by AT&T Legal Global Demand Center. So Cy-Ray had them tic-tac-toe both ways. Not only did you go and preserve this record, preserve that area, and you're not telling us, but then you're getting your reports from this special relationship that you have with somebody else. The reports were produced through another compliance unit within AT&T through the FBI's close relationship with AT&T. And I think after seeing this puppy that just got produced, this FirstNet built with AT&T, this is what comes out. Attached are the records requests, the records you requested. Call me tomorrow if you need any assistance understanding the data. January 26th, 2021. The data for January 5th was corrupted and cannot be restored. All we have is the 6th. This is why this all got released, because it's a big clusterfuck right now. January 6th, 2021. Blank from blank. I have been assigned as the SSA overseeing the FBI pipe bomb case at WFO. The blank people told me the blank data for the geofence order was corrupt and lost for 1/5/2021. Is this lost data for just the geofence request? Is blank available for individual phones of interest during the same period of time and locations? Is it all blank data for 1/5/2021? I am just trying to figure out if we have options as we develop targets of interest. Blank would be extremely help if we had some specific times and general locations for a possible suspect. Any clarification would be helpful. As always, thank you. SSA, FBI, Washington Field, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So this is from 2021. And they dealt with global legal demand. So now I'm challenging this bullshit about global legal demand. They have the availability to preserve the data. Okay, so Mr. Kohberger posts that relying on GLDC stating that they did not provide TA reports in 2022 misses the issue at hand. Throughout the discovery process, the state has provided different explanations about timing advance report availability, but always claiming it was not in their possession. Okay, because the FBI has had it. The state obtained search warrants in December of 2022 where the state sought AT&T timing advance reports for Mr. Kohberger from November of 2022. The search warrant for Mr. Kohberger's phone data contains identical verbiage as was used requesting timing advance reports in warrants issued for other AT&T phones in November of 2022. Basically, it was all preserved, so the fucking shit's going to be there. And that's why you're putting it in a search warrant. You're writing all this out that you're seeking out his timing advance because we went and preserved all of this shit back within those 7 days. We preserved it. So you can actually go and request it. Well, I think it depends on how long they put a preservation, but normally like 90 days, then you can extend it, okay? And if you keep extending it, okay, then you don't lose it. And so there was no email back that said we're unable to provide you with the timing advance records because, well, you know, XYZ. There is nothing that's saying that they didn't get everything that they requested. Remember? So the search warrant for Mr. Kohberger's phone data, again, contains identical verbiage as was used requesting TA reports in warrants issued for other AT&T phones in November of 2022. The same process of serving the warrant was also followed. Moscow Police Department obtained the warrant, provided it to FBI Special Agent Nick Valance, who then provided it to AT&T. The exact same process, which resulted in timing advance reports being produced in November, was repeated in December. Now, the objection to the state's motion limiting TA records Exhibit 2 search warrant AT&T is like, go look at that. The second AT&T warrant contained a document titled AT&T Mobility Carrier Request Form instructing AT&T to provide timing advance records for the past 7 days as available. Mr. Kohberger has sought timing advance records related to his own phone and litigated the issue. During the course of litigation, the lead detective testified he had seen Mr. Kohberger's timing advance records. Everybody keeps missing that important part that he testified. Have you seen? Yes, he testified that he had seen Kohberger's timing advance records. Mr. Kohberger has documents produced with search warrant returns that instruct AT&T to provide the timing advance data. Discovery documents contain emails about including that request in search warrants because it was available. Mr. Kohberger provides those documents as exhibits. Then, last thing, and then I'm going to get to my letter. The state's reply to that objection comes now the state of Idaho by and through the attorney, blah, blah, blah. Timing advance records refer to data that is used by providers to estimate the location of a mobile device. The collection of this data is necessary for a cellular network to work properly. Carriers do not retain this data indefinitely. Carriers do not retain this data indefinitely. This is so fucking good. Regarding AT&T, before June of 2023, Ashley Jennings says, AT&T retained timing advance records for 7 days. These records were not routinely provided in response to legal demand prior to June of 2023. After June of 2023, AT&T started providing these records pursuant to legal demand and began retaining timing advance records for 13 months. This is what you call either gaslighting or this is how lied Ashley Jennings. Ashley Jennings was so lied to, it's not even funny. In this case, she says, the homicides occurred on November 13th, 2022. Yes, Ashley. Bryan Kohberger was identified as a suspect December 19th, 2022. Yes, that's correct, Ashley. Search warrants, key term. Search warrants. And I'm saying, tisk tisk. Preservation requests. Let's talk about those preservation requests. But Ashley says, search warrants for his AT&T records were executed on December 23rd, 2022. Yep, they were. At this point, timing advance records were not available for Bryan Kohberger's phone to cover the relevant time period. November 13th. Despite defense's repeated assertions, the fact of the matter is that AT&T did not provide timing advance records to law enforcement for Bryan Kohberger's phone. The state is attaching affidavits from AT&T verifying that the state did not receive timing advance records for Bryan Kohberger's phone. See State's Exhibit S1 and Exhibit S2. Based on the above statements or inferences by defense counsel or their witnesses that there is additional evidence that could have been provided or was not provided is simply not correct and should not be allowed. Now, October 2nd, 2025, attention Ashley Jennings. Latah County Prosecutor's Office, Ashley Jennings, Moscow, Idaho, all that address crap. Okay. Attention Ashley Jennings, RE, AT&T Timing Advance and Global Legal Demand Center. This is Lana Oriani with Truth and Transparency. I am an independent investigative journalist. Full disclosure, I have been very critical of your work during the Bryan Kohberger case. With that said, I am also willing to admit when and if I was wrong about any past reporting that influenced my negative opinions of yourself and efforts while prosecuting the Bryan Kohberger case. Please understand that my opinions and coverage directly reflect what I was able to obtain and come to access with through the public records requests and public filings that were presented in this case. For example, I pride myself on obtaining trial transcripts of experts who would have testified in the past in certain cases to then have a good understanding of the subject matter for future cases where that expert is expected to testify to that same subject matter. I'm a huge fan of the old school phrase, showing your work. Hence, my channel name is Truth and Transparency. To be clear, I plan on holding myself and any misinformation that I have published in the past on my channel, I'm holding myself accountable. That is, probably you're going to ask yourself, how would I do that? Well, by removing it or editing it. Yes, even if it was a video I've authored over 3 years ago. I pride myself on demanding the highest level of integrity and standards from those I choose to work with, and it is because I do my best to deliver just as equally on those forefronts. My next story, and it's a big one, is titled The Real Desperate Agents of the FBI. How they continue to get away with it. With that said, my next big story needs a very reliable source, one that has personal knowledge of the topic I am reporting on, and one that has the green light to be transparent about the investigation, pre-arrest, post-arrest, and ultimately after the case of Bryan Kohberger was closed. You and your office were able to secure a plea from Bryan Kohberger at the 11th hour, where Bryan Kohberger, essentially pled guilty to all charges and admitted to being the person responsible for brutally stabbing and killing 4 college students while in their bedrooms in the middle of the night and without any linkage of how any of the victims knew Bryan Kohberger, or vice versa. With that said, Ms. Jennings, you are the person I am seeking out to be the main source of my next writing because I believe you possess the personal knowledge needed to prove my story has legs. I believe you and your local and state law enforcement officers were taken advantage of and used by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The communities across the country who have followed this case are owed the truth about your real experiences with working with the FBI as quote unquote as partners with the Bryan Kohberger case. I believe you are in possession of critical information that supports my position that FBI agents are jeopardizing local prosecutors' livelihoods as well as local and state law enforcement careers by quote unquote going rogue when quote unquote helping local and state investigations where the feds do not have jurisdiction. You possess the real timeline of events within the investigation into who murdered the 4 University of Idaho students. You have personal knowledge of every single meeting that was held in connection with the investigation and prosecution efforts for this case. You possess all emails between yourself and the FBI, as well as any emails between your local law enforcement and the FBI. You were personally present at the Moscow Police Department when debriefing would go on at the beginning and end of days. It is my belief, Ms. Jennings, that you were fed false information on what real information came back from any third parties that were served search warrants and or subpoenas. For this story, my focus is solely on the third party AT&T. For example, AT&T search warrants are separate from the FBI's preservation best practice request. The FBI's best practice is to obtain geofence location due to where the crime was allegedly occurring, right, where that location's at, and where future suspects could have traveled to and from the crime based on investigative information. The FBI's best practice patterns with preservation requests made when quote unquote helping and quote unquote proving their resources to local and state agencies to ensure that smaller agencies are equipped with when a suspect would be, found, that their geolocation data would be available to search when the IMEI number would be known, or the phone number or subscriber name. My next story revolves around the timing advance debacle that surfaced within the prosecution of Bryan Kohberger. I am seeking out an accurate timeline of events surrounding your experience with asking for and securing timing advance records from AT&T for the purpose of developing a geofence. I'm using an FBI newly released document pertaining to the January 6, 2021 pipe bombs as one of my sources for the upcoming story. As recently as yesterday, October 1st, 2025, I received a 9-page document from the FBI pertaining to timing advance information / records in connection with the January 6, 2021 pipe bombs. I have attached the 9 pages released by the FBI to this email. After you read the 9 pages, I think you will agree with me that something seems off with what you filed within your documents in connection with this topic. After reading and reviewing your position within your filings, it is my position that the FBI was not honest with you. But my opinion and position can't change if I am misinterpreting the information. It seems that the greater scope and capability of the FBI was not disclosed to you and your staff. Timing advance records have nothing to do with knowing a suspect or suspect's phone number or IMEI number within the 7 days of the event occurring. Again, this was a year and a half prior to November 13th, 2022, the January 6th pipe bombing. And so I can only imagine how much growth occurred during that time with AT&T and Timing Advance. Bottom line, after reading the 9 pages, it is grossly obvious that the FBI's best practice is to issue preservation requests to AT&T Global Legal Demand for areas of interest, their latitude and longitude, pertaining to the crime that is being investigated. The University of Idaho murders area would most likely be the University of Idaho college campus in the immediate surrounding areas of travel out of the town and the neighboring towns such as Pullman, Washington, where WSU campus is located. The FBI in January of 2021 used preservation requests for timing advance records in the hopes that when a suspect or person of interest was identified through their investigating agencies, that they would then look at the data that was preserved from back then. Not that they had to find somebody within 7 days. You're preserving that data. You can find the motherfucker in 50 years, as long as you keep preserving it. That's a sidebar right there. I didn't write that in there. Where was I? Sorry. FBI in January. I'm just going to restart this paragraph. FBI in January of 2021 used preservation requests for timing advance records in the hopes that when and if suspects or persons of interest were identified, the investigating agency would then look at the data that was preserved and see if that suspect or person of interest phone's IMEI number appears within the preserved data. The 7-day retention period is just for the preservation. You have to go tell them that you want to preserve the data within 7 days of the time period that you're looking to preserve in that area. Not that you need to know a person within 7 days. A record for people that you do not know of at the time, but once suspects or persons of interest develop over the course of the investigation, then you'll be able to get their timing advance records for that specific area. This is of great importance to retrace the movements in and through certain areas around the time of the crime. This is no different than the search warrants that were issued on the towers. In essence, that was an act of preservation. With this said, and your knowledge that Moscow and Pullman are frequently traveled back and forth as stated in the probable cause affidavit, and based off of your immediate understanding that a vehicle left the area at 4 a.m., it is unfathomable to think that the FBI did not preserve and put a preservation order in for data points to include WSU. The biggest surprise was remembering your statements from the court filings, insofar that it was your understanding from being told this by the FBI, as you stated you were advised, which was in March/April of 2025, that Global Legal Demand could not, until June of 2023, produce any timing advance reports. And that is why your requests for the defendant's timing advance records were not produced. Also, it was your position that the timing advance records only have a 7-day retention period, which I am not disputing, at least yet. But what you never mentioned was the fact that if you preserve the data within 7 days, Then you could go back once you had the phones of interest and examine and see what type of reporting was going on to the towers and the antennas and everything like that. The preservation period. These documents from Washington, D.C. state that in January of 2021, Global Legal Demand Center could and did produce timing advance records to the FBI. I was hoping to be able to speak through email and or via Zoom to obtain a complete understanding of you and your office, or what you and your office were told by the FBI concerning AT&T and timing advance records with regards to the Bryan Kohberger case. Obviously, you are aware of the position of expert Cy Ray from his publicly disclosed affidavit in connection with the same topic. I am making a good faith effort to come directly to the source, which I believe is you and your office, as you authored the documents within the docket of the Bryan Kohberger case as it pertains to the AT&T/timing advance records. Are you willing and able to go on record to answer questions surrounding AT&T/timing advance records and what was disclosed to you by the FBI, whether it was in writing or telecommunications? I am willing to provide all of my questions in writing, and you can answer as many as you can in the same format from your personal knowledge. From there, if I have any follow-up questions, again, I can resubmit those to you in writing. Is this something you would be willing to participate in? This can include anyone at your office that has any personal knowledge of what I've stated, such as Bill Thompson. My questions are for transparency with the communities that have followed this case and who have been highly critical, like myself, of the constant misinformation that has been reported in this case, even by and through the public filing, the docket. I personally believe that you were lied to by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and if my hunch is accurate, those mistruths spoken to you and then you trusting that information, once spoken or written by yourself, and actually put a target on your back. Hence the affidavit by Cy Ray. As well, putting your whole entire career, past and present, in jeopardy. If the FBI misled you intentionally, I have a problem with that. And the people have a right to know how government officials are interacting with other government officials when pursuing criminal justice matters, such as the death penalty in the Bryan Kohberger case. I am asking for you to grant me the opportunity to stand up for you as it pertains to this specific matter. I fight for what is right, Ms. Jennings. Our rights matter to me. And that would include your rights. You have the right to present a case in front of a jury without being compromised by the federal government. My understanding was your office was attempting to wall off the defense team from being able to even mention or question anyone on the stand about the defendant's timing advance records, which, to your credit, you bluntly stated the state was not in possession of any timing advance records of the defendant Bryan Kohberger. But can you say the same about the Federal Bureau of Investigation? I am looking for clarification as to your understanding of the exact situation surrounding the timing advance debacle. I am asking you to fully disclose what you and the FBI discussed as to search warrants pertaining to Bryan Kohberger's timing advance records, as well as if and when the FBI did a preservation request on the AT&T towers located in Pullman, Washington. The rest is redacted for public. Now, it all makes sense, guys. Woohoo! I have one question for Cy Ray. Was it a strategic move to leave the word preservation request off of everything that you guys filed in connection with this case? Because it seems to me that it was a strategy to not talk about in any form the word preservation request. Because that's where the best practice comes in. Can you imagine, though, if I wouldn't have just October 1st yesterday? I mean, those two things can't be true. And then I was able to use my brain and realize that, holy shit, Jack Showalter said that he went through Washington to get the fuck home. He went through Washington to get the fuck home. So huge. Jack Showalter saying that he went through Washington to get the fuck home would be reason enough that you would have, and he said it within the 7 days, is reason enough to know that they would have preserved that area. No doubt about it. Especially they had to have if they produced the timing advance records for him. Which they did.
What the state is not saying.
So basically, Jack Showalter going the route that he went home. Boom. There you go. Absolutely. So again, I've always said this. If you give me the material, I'll put it all together. Okay. Earlier, we sent Moscow another request, and it was, where is it? In relation to Meghan Markle's new judgment. So I was able to put together last night and this morning A through S. We have all new requests. So I'll read these off really quick. A is 314 MPD reports unredacted in compliance with Meghan Markle's ruling. B, body-worn camera of first responding police officers Gunderson, Snyder, Warner, Nunes, and Smith. Redacted video such audio in compliance with Meghan Markle's judgment. All Snyder's pictures taken with his personal use cell phone and work cell phone in compliance with Judge Meghan Markle's ruling. D, all Smith's pictures taken with his cell phone and MPD issued camera / phone at the crime scene on 11/13/2022 within compliance with Judge Marshall's ruling. E, Hunter Johnson's interview with Warner outside the house, unredacted, in compliance with Judge Meghan Markle's ruling. F, Hunter Johnson's interview at MPD, unredacted and not blurred, in compliance with Judge Meghan Markle's ruling. G, Emily Allant, C, letter F. Dylan Mortensen, same as E and F. Bethany Funk, same as E and F. Jack Decor, same as F. K, Jack Showalter car interview with David Hathaway with no redactions. L, 1112 STD card, duplicate copy of all surveillance supplied to the Moscow Police Department. I would like a mirror image in compliance with Judge Meghan Markle's judgment. Emphasis added on 8 to 10 a.m. on 11/13/2022, where Bryan Kohberger allegedly drove past the house. Sit down, bitch. M, Bryan Kohberger interview audio recorded with Payne in compliance with Judge Meghan Markle's ruling. N, Molly McMichael interview with Payne at MPD on 11/23/2022 without any blurs, redactions, in compliance with Judge Meghan Markle's ruling. O, search warrant written by Mitch Nunes on 11/13/2022 with PCA attached in compliance with Judge Meghan Markle's ruling. No redactions, period. P, Gunderson's personal and work issued cell phone. Phone records. Incoming and outgoing calls between 11/13/2022, 11/15/2022 while working the crime scene or neighborhood canvas. Q, MPD training records for all officers that worked the crime scene security who cleared the house at 1112 King Road and neighborhood surveillance and neighborhood canvases. Smiths, Snyder, Gunderson, Warner, and Noonan's. Are training records for Chief Dollinger, Tyson Barrett, Roger Lanier, and John Lawrence, Detective John Lawrence, up and until November 13th, 2022. S. Moscow Police Department's payroll and scheduled hours worked between November 13th, 2022 and December 31st, 2022. Full transparency. There's reasons that I've asked for certain things based on some of these reports and the dates that they did reports, or the dates that they did the physical job and the date they wrote the report. I want to see their pay records. I want to see their schedule, and I want to see if they were in fact working. Okay, when they said they did stuff. I want to see what hours they said they worked. And I'm going to compare that to every single report that was written by every single person in the Moscow Police Department. I'm going to start eliminating very, very critical time periods of when shit could have been done and when shit had the ability to be done. And I'm running my own goddamn investigation. But that is what public requests are for. It is to I don't want to say it's to police our police. It's just to, hey, we're allowed to make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to be, that you're doing what you said that you're doing. I'm allowed to check up on you. I pay you. You guys pay. Okay, with that said, how many think that the bitch is going to call me back? I shouldn't say bitch. That's actually totally not cool of me. So I more or less want her to be a source for to basically call out the FBI. But I think I have it's a very truthful approach, because it's like, listen, girl, your job was like basically like, I don't believe the local and state law enforcement people, they don't have the knowledge. So when you're to tell me something, right, if you're the feds, I don't know anything about this shit. So if this is what you tell me that this data means and I write it down, right? But here you were lying to me. Same thing with like Ashley Jennings. How are people that are in local and state positions that do not have the knowledge, how are you supposed to question what someone's telling you like that? So they just need to be like, just tell the truth, because the whole purpose of this, what I'm doing, is that if you think that you're doing, hey, by doing the federal government a favor by, oh, yeah, no, I'm not going to say anything, then they're going to like owe me one. Oh, hey, yeah, that person didn't say shit. And hey, get them, bring them over here and get them a, promotion. This shit's popping off. This shit's going to be popping off. And I just look at it that I don't even know how people that do not have the education, how you would even be able to argue if the feds tell you X, Y, and Z. If you ask them, was there a preservation order? No. Well, what if there was? You can't say, oh, let me see. What do? I'm going to subpoena AT&T and say, hey, did the feds ask you to preserve this area? I mean, how do you really get to the bottom of that? Think about it. It's fucking, it's crazy. But I believe that the feds are going rogue. Okay. And when dealing with what they did in the situation, and it happens all the time. And if I'm a betting woman, I think that that's where the exposure, I mean, I have to ask myself, why the fuck would Cyril write everything that he did? Think about it. Syray has and possesses the knowledge. And there's certain things that, hey, this needs to stop. So this has nothing to do about Bryan Kohberger. Like, this is, what are you doing? You're lying. And the question is why are you lying? Why are you lying? Why couldn't, if it was just that his, just 7 minutes and it didn't matter. It's just, what do those records truly show? So anyways, I'm doing my part. You guys can do your part by showing up, sharing the video, and we put the work in over here. So when I'm ever late for a live or something gets pushed back, you guys, it's not because I'm on the fucking beach chilling. All right, it's because literally I was like adamant. I was like, you know what? I'm fucking writing this, and I wanted to pop it on over. I wanted to get some things out this morning, and they took a little longer than I was anticipating because I reread everything that Ashley Jennings had wrote. I reread it all just to make sure that my brain wasn't, and I loved it because she said what she was advised of, and I believe that. You know how pissed I would be if, like, dude, what the fuck, you guys? If I was Ashley Jennings, I would be like, but she's stuck between a heart. Like, what is she supposed to do? That's what these assholes told me. And I don't know. I'm writing it. And then we get these returns. I don't know what any of them mean. We give them to tell us what they mean. Right. And so you're getting, so that's where I was saying that I want to take back some of the things that I've said, because I think people were put in positions that they didn't, they're in these positions not because they're corrupt. Somebody else is corrupt. And then you're supplying me with that bullshit. And then now I'm subject to, when Hitler was saying, like, this could get somebody disbarred, lose your job, stuff like that. Okay. But Sy called out the state. He called out Thompson and Jennings. They know. Well, they're going to have it would be like, if he thinks that they know, it's because he's using the verbiage to say, you were asking for timing advanced. Okay. And then she's going to say, I never saw the returns though. And then I asked them what we got back and why they're asking us for this. And then they're telling me that they don't exist. Okay. So I believe that Ashley Jennings is being fed bullshit. And then if she was told after the fact, hey, do you want to lose this case? Sure, here, you want these timing advance records? You want to lose the case? Because all I'm saying is that they had the timing advance records. That's how they were able to put all of this, how they were able to put everything together that they put in that probable cause affidavit tells me that they had Bryan Kohberger's timing advance records. Okay. Everything. How they were able to go and get all these little clips. How they knew he went to Costco, timing advance records. How they knew he walked into Costco, timing advanced records. Because it GPS'd him. It GPS tracked him. That's why I want to know, when I want to have this conversation with the Cellbrite people to say, okay, you guys are saying that he shut off his blah, blah, blah 2 days before, whatever. I want to talk about a little bit about this. Because I need you guys to make it clear to the world that even if you shut off your Wi-Fi, that has nothing to do with what? Ding, ding, ding. Like, that's misleading. You're misleading the community by saying, oh, Bryan shut off his Wi-Fi 2 days before the murders. He did it on 4 other occasions, though, right? Okay. And he didn't stop using, I'm going to talk about the bug guard, the bug guard. If you go look at those pictures, I thought that the bug guard would look too new, but go back and check the pictures if you want. I think that there's no evidence of him purchasing it. And so that was why it was like, oh, he started using cash. because that's a very, very important thing to be mentioning about the car. Because the ones that they have on camera do not have one. So there's just some they had his time in advance, you guys. They had his time in advance because they preserved the area. Okay. They had the preservation going on for all the areas. Okay. And then when they got their person, when they got a name, okay, then they have that. And normally what they do is they preserve it for 90 days. That's normal. That's why I pulled up the January 6, 2021 preservation. And so all you do is you just have within 7 days, say, if you want this, you just come to us, get us, and we'll preserve it. But you do not need to. It's misleading. It's misleading. All right. DB, you said you have something special for me? What do you got for me, DB? Is it sweet? Because I really want some cool I want some cool views of when I like hit it and zoom in. But let's see. But if they had his TA records and geolocation data, they would have been able to see him at a store, then look to see if he purchased a bug guard. He did. I think he purchased it before. Yeah. I'm still looking for the 2:53 a.m. video. So if anybody finds that, let me know. It's fat. Oh, sweet. I can't wait. All right, guys. Sayonara, motherfuckers. I'm out. I'll be back later. They had that area. They had so many time. They had Bryan's time in advance. Bye-bye. Poker face. Poker Bill.